Are opened for Pope John Paul II.
Hello. It has been beset by problems and controversy, and today Prince Charles's wedding looks like it may be postponed until May. An inside source has told ITV News that as Charles and Camilla's big day clashes with the Pope's funeral, they may well have to cancel. It's thought that Charles would want to pay his own last respects to the pontiff, and many of his guests, not least the Prime Minister and the Archbishop of Canterbury, cannot be in both places at once. Well, Sue Saville has the very latest.
Their wedding plans have been dogged by controversy, blunders and now an unfortunate clash of dates. With only 4 days to go, Prince Charles and Camilla are now having to consider postponing their big day to give precedence to those who must attend the Pope's funeral. It's a logistical headache.
I think if they postponed this wedding, it would be a complete nightmare. Look at all the preparation and all the arrangements that have gone into this. I mean, it has been a nightmare to get this far, to then have to postpone it and rearrange and find another date when everybody's free. Finding a date when every member of the royal family can attend one event is bad enough in itself, but, you know, they've achieved it. The Duke of Edinburgh is coming rushing back from Germany in order to be there. I think to find another date would just be such a shame, and it would prolong the agony for these two.
A key concern has been the very legitimacy of a civil marriage for the heir to the throne. The government's leading solicitor gave ITV's news channel her response.
I feel sorry for Charles and Camilla. They must feel what else is going to happen to... but anyway, I'm sure it'll turn out all right on the day.
The Register Office in Windsor, which Charles and Camilla have booked for this Friday, may now be subject to a cancellation and a rebooking when a suitable new date can be found. Sue Saville, ITV News.
Well, our UK editor, Tom Bradby, is here with me now. Tom, any news from Clarence House yet?
Well, no news officially, and they're basically locked into meetings. And of course, they're sitting there thinking, oh no, what are we going to do about this? And it's not easy, obviously. I think increasingly it looks, and this is just a guess, but I think it looks unlikely the wedding will be able to go ahead on the same day for all kinds of reasons. You know, taste, how it will look, how it will feel. You know, there are many Catholics, 5 million Catholics in this country, so I think that's very difficult. Their instinct will be to try and push it to the next day. Well, that's okay. You know, caterers will be able to stay on and all the rest of it, but can the Queen come? Can the Archbishop of Canterbury come? We don't know. You know, how you know, what about other couples? We already know there's one other couple at least getting married the next day. How's that going to work in security terms? I should think the police will be screaming with kind of panic about the whole thing. So, and if that doesn't work out, well, to be honest, I think they'll have to opt for after the election, you know, which is months away. So that's how serious it is. I think it's a really desperate day for them.
Tom, you know, we've talked on the Lunchtime News before a couple of times about the problems that had beset them before this, but nothing on this scale. I mean, this really is a terrible stroke of bad luck for a wedding couple.
You do start to wonder if it's jinxed. I mean, this is just desperate bad luck. And I think the only thing that you can possibly say in favour is that by the time they do get married, they'll have had so much kind of stuff to deal with that even perhaps the most hard-hearted cynic in the country might be prepared to think, oh well, you know, for goodness sake, let's just give them a break. But you know, that's a big step, and for the moment it's just a terrible, terrible mess of the worst possible kind.
Indeed. Well, Tom, thank you very much. Now, a little later in the programme, we will be going live to Clarence House for the latest from the Prince's office. Now, the royal wedding can't be moved to Saturday if another wedding is taking place there. We know that there are at least 3 weddings in the Guildhall in Windsor this coming Saturday. Now, we're joined on the phone by Fraser Moores, who is one half of one of those couples. Well, Fraser, first of all, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Congratulations on your up-and-coming wedding. The first question I've really got to ask you is, are you prepared to postpone your big day to make way for Charles and Camilla?
Absolutely not. I don't think that can happen. It's a lot of preparation. It's just, it would be a nightmare. I'd forget it. No way.
I quite understand, but you must have a bit of sympathy for them. I mean, as someone who's getting married yourself, it really does seem like a terrible start to married life.
Yeah, I kind of sympathise with the problems, but you know, we've organised our wedding ourselves, and it's hard work. It's hard work. So you know, you have to deal with the problems. They're big problems for them, but you know, the problem the same. You've got to deal with it.
Indeed. Well, Fraser, good luck for Saturday. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Now, mourners in their thousands are gathered at the Vatican this lunchtime, each of them there to pay their last respects to the Holy Father as he lies in state. From cardinals to nuns to pilgrims, they've come to Rome to say their farewells to Pope John Paul II. Members of the public there to see him could reach into the millions. Paul Davis reports.
L'eterno riposo dona a lui, o Signore.
So many people wanting to say their own personal goodbyes to a man who touched so many lives around the world. Today, the second day of mourning, dignitaries and pilgrims have been filing past the body of Pope John Paul II in the Vatican Palace, where he lies in state, his head resting on two golden pillows. The queues appear to be growing by the minute. This afternoon, John Paul's body will be transferred across St. Peter's Square to the Basilica, and that's when the general public will get their opportunity to say farewell. It's anticipated 2 million people are either already in Rome or making their way to the Vatican for that purpose.
Well, I'm waiting to say goodbye and to see the Pope for the last time as he lays in state.
I plan to just give my blessings and just for everyone. I mean, there's a lot of people that I'm sure will turn up. I heard that there's going to be like 2 to 3 million people. That's amazing for one person.
Cardinals meeting this morning have already decided the funeral will take place on Friday. Soon they know they'll have another much more difficult issue to settle, the succession. Who will follow the remarkable pontiff from Poland?
It is a situation which calls for very, very special thought. I mean, to find a person replacing such a great man is rather difficult, and so it's a situation of great concern.
There are other questions as yet unanswered. Will John Paul's body be interred in the crypt below St. Peter's Basilica, traditional resting place of popes? Catholics in Poland had been hoping he might return to his own country for his final resting place. There are already moves there to start the process that would elevate him to sainthood. In his own lifetime, John Paul II oversaw the creation of more saints than any pope before him. Paul Davis, ITV News.
Well, Emma Murphy is in Rome for us now. Emma, do you have any more details about the funeral arrangements this lunchtime?
Well, we've been briefed this morning by Navarro Valls, who is the late Pope's official press spokesman. He's been bringing us up to date with how those plans are going. We have now had it confirmed that the funeral will take place, as you've already said, at 10 o'clock Italian time, 9 o'clock UK time on Friday. It was decided by 65 cardinals this morning who went into a private meeting in order to thrash out the details. We believe they've also been considering the last will and testament of Pope John Paul II. It was interesting looking at those cardinals going into the meeting because they are, of course, some of the men who will be chosen in that whole conclave to decide on who the new Pope will be. And with the picture of Pope John Paul looking down over them, they had to establish so many details. We expect to see around 2 million people arriving here, at least 100 heads of state and dignitaries. And of course, then there will be the discussion as to whether or not Pope John Paul is laid to rest here in the Vatican or whether he will go on to Poland to be laid to rest in his natural homeland.
Emma Murphy, thank you very much.
Yesterday afternoon, it was a different story. Clarence House was still insisting that the wedding would go ahead regardless. If the funeral were to take place on Friday, it would not affect the wedding. As far as Clarence House is concerned, the wedding will go ahead as planned on Friday. Today, though, it became clear that it wasn't just Charles who faced an impossible double booking. Many of his high-profile guests, from the Prime Minister to the Archbishop of Canterbury, were expecting to go to Rome. So the civil ceremony at the Guildhall has been moved to Saturday. The Prince will have to work around the other 3 weddings on the day.
We were very much in the final stages of planning for Friday anyway, so the change of date is not a great deal for us. Obviously, it'll just be now taking place on the Saturday instead of the Friday.
The U-turn on the date is the latest pitfall to beset the wedding. Days after the engagement, Clarence House was forced to reject claims that the marriage would be illegal. Then the venue had to be switched from Windsor Castle to Windsor Guildhall when officials realised the castle didn't have an appropriate licence. Shortly after that, the Queen announced that she wouldn't even be there. Her excuse that the couple wanted a low-key event didn't convince everyone.
On the surface, this is another piece of bad luck to afflict the royal wedding. In fact, it's a wonderful opportunity because Prince Charles has now made a sacrifice. He has shown an awareness there are more important things in the world than his marriage to Camilla.
So on Friday, the Prince of Wales will be paying his respects at the Vatican rather than saying his vows in Windsor. Royal souvenir makers will have to do some rapid restocking. Romilly Weeks, ITV News at Clarence House.
Let's now go to our political editor, Nick Robinson. Nick, any political input in this decision about putting the wedding back?
Well, it's interesting that overnight the message came, as we were hearing, that this wedding would go ahead. And then first thing this morning, Downing Street made pretty clear that if the Prime Minister faced a choice between the wedding and the funeral, he'd choose the funeral. The word also from Lambeth Palace was that the Archbishop was very keen, the Archbishop of Canterbury, to go to the funeral. Now, it may simply be that Clarence House's public relations effort, if you like, was a little bit behind that of Downing Street, that they knew that they would have to shift this event. But of course it is open to the suggestion that there was a little bit of pressure coming from Downing Street, coming from the established church as well, to say that this wedding simply can't go ahead. Officially, both Clarence House and Downing Street insist that this was a decision of the Prince and of his wife-to-be, and that they knew it should change. It is intriguing though, isn't it, Trevor, to look at these two pillars of the state, the elected Prime Minister, the head of the established church, choosing not to go to the wedding of the heir to the throne and the next supreme governor of the Church of England, but to go instead to the funeral of a pope. I wonder what Henry VIII would have made of it all.
And Mr. Blair had some political business to do today, which has also been put back.
That's right. I would have been here had it not been for the death of the Pope, talking about the general election that would have been called. I know people doubted it for weeks and months as we said it, but it was always in the diary to be today. It will now be tomorrow morning, providing, of course, there isn't another funeral or a wedding or an asteroid or a plague of locusts. And the polls out tonight in 4 newspapers suggest a substantial Labour lead, 3 points, but an intriguing wrinkle. If you only ask those people certain to vote Trevor, suddenly the Tories are in the lead. And that's why this election campaign will still count.
Nick Robinson, thank you. Tonight in Rome, where it's almost midnight, people are moving in a steady stream through St. Peter's Basilica, where the body of the Pope lies in state. He was moved there today in a ceremony elaborate with symbolism. On Friday, he'll be laid to rest in the Basilica's crypt. Bill Neely is in the Vatican tonight. Bill?
Trevor, kings, presidents and prime ministers are preparing to join a vast crowd here on Friday. They're expecting 2 million people for the Pope's funeral. Extraordinary scenes here too today, a papal procession with its roots in the Dark Ages. And down there tonight, tens of thousands of people still queuing for one last look at an extraordinary man.
In life, wherever he went, crowds flocked to him. So too in death. An unending stream tonight to St. Peter's Basilica, the first of 4 days and nights when Pope John Paul II will lie in state. He loved the theatre, and what a stage this was. After one of the longest papacies and the long illness, the long goodbye began today with a final journey from his rooms. Through the corridors of a Vatican he dominated as few before him have, he was borne up, one of the great leaders of the last half-century. And then the Pope, who travelled as none before him have, emerged into the open air and the brilliant sunlight for the last time. St. Peter's Square, where he preached every week for a quarter of a century, filled with the faithful straining for a glimpse. Here he was shot at the start of his papacy, but he lived to forgive the gunman and dazzle the world. At the top of the steps they turned the body that has borne so much pain, and the most visible Pope there's ever been was shown to the Roman crowd. Deep below St. Peter's, the quiet of the crypt, where he'll be buried on Friday alongside more than 100 of his predecessors. He used to come here often to think. Amid a frenetic life, here he found peace, and he will again. These are the men who arranged his funeral and who'll choose his successor. The cardinals who met today for the first time since his death. They are John Paul's men. He appointed virtually all of them. And one of them, perhaps this Nigerian cardinal, will be chosen by the rest later this month to be the next pope. In the crowd, thoughts already turning to who comes next.
Just here's hoping that the other pope who's elected takes the same trail that he did and breaks down the barriers.
There's a danger that we might go back to the way it was before. I think John Paul has opened doors now that has brought the whole thing that he's a man of the people, and from that point of view we hope that that continues.
There is no doubt that in life he divided Catholics more than any pope in memory. He was an absolute ruler. But tonight, in death, he has united them. And here he lies, the humble boy from Krakow, the unforgettable Pope. Bill Neely, ITV News at the Vatican.
Tomorrow's expected announcement of the general election by Mr. Blair will come after a stinging warning about the potential for ballot fraud. A judge said today that postal voting doesn't only increase the possibility of fraud, some aspects of the current system actually encourage it and would disgrace even a banana republic. He was ruling on claims of fraud in 2 Birmingham council elections. Our political correspondent Libby Vina reports.
They were jeered as they left the court, 6 Labour councillors who'd rigged an election, leaving a judge to condemn the whole postal voting system.